All right, well, welcome. This is a talk or discussion on GLP-1s, everything that you wanted to know, and hopefully we're not afraid to ask. That is me. So today we're going to cover GLP-1 inhibitors, what they are and how they work, benefits and advantages, concerns and drawbacks. We have an interesting article from Dr. Kessler. We're going to talk about brand names versus compounding, which are the generic version of it, and next steps. And that's who I am. So I'm 40 years out of medical school. I'm boarded in internal medicine, gastroenterology, and liver disease. I did my fellowship in liver transplantation and gastroenterology at Pittsburgh. I'm an attending physician at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. I started my own practice 3+ decades ago. It's a multi-specialty group on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And in addition to having my MD, I was awarded a FACP and FACG, which is just a fellowship of the American College of Physicians and Gastroenterology for, I guess, publishing and teaching and just good stuff. I think I did that more for my parents and grandparents than I did for me. So it's interesting. The GLP, glucagon-like peptide 1, was first discovered 40 years ago. And it's taken several decades for us to get to where we are today. And what it does, it inhibits, or it acts the way glucagon acts. Now, it's currently indicated to treat type 2 diabetes and weight management or obesity. The common examples are, as you know, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, which is tirzepatide. So there's two different chemical compounds. One is semaglutide and one's tirzepatide. We're just going to stick with the semaglutide, Ozempic, because that's the more common one. It's been around, I think it was first FDA approved in 2017, and tirzepatide or Mounjaro was approved about 2 years ago. And it does a lot of great things. It helps blood control, blood sugar control, weight loss, it improves cardiovascular health, amongst other things. So the body uses glucose to power itself. And for the majority of human existence, we have experienced a state of fasting. Only until the last 75 years or so, with refrigeration and mass production of food, we don't have to worry about eating. But prior to that, the human spent the majority of their time starving. So the body was developed to capture all the glucose that it ingests. So things are broken down into glucose, whether it be sugar, carbohydrates. The element that is broken down to is sugar. Now, glucose powers the body. So if you look at it, that you need sugar, your brain is powered on sugar, your body, your tissues, muscle, everything. You have about a teaspoonful of sugar circulating in your blood. And when the body has more than that available that it needs, it starts to store it. It's like a squirrel storing nuts. The first level of storage is glycogen. And it puts away as much sugar as possible as glycogen. And if there's more sugar still circulating in the body, and it has as much glycogen as it can make, it starts storing it as fat. And what we talk about with our patients is that these compounds cause fat loss, not just weight loss, but fat loss. So the body stores everything it has that it can get, it gets its hands on. And then when you're hungry or the body needs energy and you haven't eaten for a while, it breaks down stored sources of sugar, glycogen and fat in that order. And that's what glucagon does. Glucagon is a hormone that is released from the pancreas. It is the exact opposite of insulin. It raises blood sugar. It stops the body from storing sugar and glycogen. And it prevents you from running out of gasoline. So when we give it's a catabolic hormone. Insulin does the exact opposite. It drives sugar into the body for use as energy. The problem is that sometimes you don't need all that energy. If you're sleeping and you just went to bed and you had an ice cream sundae, you have all this sugar circulating in your body that you're not going to use. So it starts to store it. And that's how we get into the problem that we have with the majority of health conditions in this country. And if you look, I don't want to get too deep into this. These are all the effects. So GLP is just glucagon-like peptide. It increases insulin secretion, so it works to free sugar from storage and to put it into circulation so insulin can drive it into the tissue for energy. It's really that simple. And if there's too much storage, you get these different conditions. You get fatty liver, you have hypertension, you have all the medical problems that we associate with having too much sugar storage. So there are positive effects to these inhibitors. So what semaglutide and tirzepatide are, they're hormones, or they're signals in the brain that tell your body, stop. It stops the effect of the insulin and increases the effect of glucagon. So it causes weight loss because it now breaks down sugar. It lowers your A1C levels. It has other benefits that we're finding in addition to those advantages in terms of arthritis, and even with anxiety and depression, and other noises that we see in life. We have psychiatrists sending us patients for anxiety and depression and tics. It seems to be very effective with all types of noise, including nicotine, caffeine, chemical addictions like cocaine, alcohol. It seems to turn off that noise in the brain very effectively. So there's some side effects. Now we're just talking about the medication itself, semaglutide or Ozempic. So it slows down stomach emptying. It's going to make you feel fuller quicker. There's no real long-term study on this yet. They've only been around for a few years. So the number of human years experience is not great. To date, there's really no significant contraindication or real bad side effect. The only real medical contraindication is if you've had a very rare form of thyroid cancer, medullary thyroid cancer. We don't know how long people need to be on them for. The current practice, so I have probably 200 patients on it currently. And I don't like to practice medicine or anything first person in life. But in my experience, and I think in most people's experience now, what happens is that we find the right dose and we change the interval. So it's normally a weekly shot. And what we do is we increase the interval between injections. So we have people on it every 8 weeks, every 10 weeks, and we have a bunch of people that are off of it. It also seems to propel people into healthier lifestyles. They start making better choices. They taste success for the first time. So in spite of, let's say, going to the gym and eating correctly, they still can't take off that weight. This seems to propel them into a healthier lifestyle. One of the barriers is it's an injection. So a lot of people, full disclosure, I've been experimenting with it for 4 months now. I did not give myself the first injection. I much prefer giving people needles and not receiving them. But the delivery system is very easy. The needle is a 31 gauge, so not even a 1/4 inch, so you don't even feel it. And it's done in the abdomen. So the number of nerve receptors, so you could have, let's say, thousands of nerve receptors in your fingertip. The number of nerve receptors on the skin in your abdomen are very, very few, very sparse. So you don't really feel it at all. Part of the issue that we have is the insurance companies tend not to cover it. And I don't want to get too deep into that, but the reason that we went to the trouble of getting it for our patients directly is that unless you hit very strict criteria, a BMI of 35 or 40, usually with diabetes or heart disease, you're not going to get approved. And then there's a huge cost differential. You can get it through our office for less than $200 versus going directly through the company. And I think at this point, they're down to $499. but usually it's somewhere between $700 to $1,000, and that's for the semaglutide. The tirzepatide is probably over $1,000. So there's still a very big cost factor. It was interesting, Dr. Kessler, who served under Bush and Clinton, smart guy, lawyer, and a doctor, he has been on it himself too. And I think that he's noticed what I've noticed and what I think our patients have noticed, that this is not the only answer to our problem in terms of obesity, but it's a very big foundation upon which success is being built. Can you lose weight? And I want to go beyond weight loss with this, by the way. Can you lose weight with this? The answer is yes. Can you row actively against it when you're on it? The answer is yes. I mean, we have a lot of people that are on it that still could be better, don't have that 12 o'clock, Ben & Jerry's pint of ice cream. It's still very effective, but it still requires you to participate in your own well-being. And I think that's really important. It's interesting in that before I started it, I did a lot of research, and you come across all these experts, and patients too, they tell you what happens that when you take this medication, the noise stops. The food noise stops, and other noises stop too. It's being used very effectively to treat people who have alcoholism. And not that I'm an alcoholic, but I can tell you that my alcohol consumption is down at least 75 or 80%. And the other noise in life also seems to dissipate. So I think it allows you to take better control over yourself and use that window of opportunity to develop better habits in terms of eating and exercise. And the way that we're using it, because it has changed the way that we're practicing medicine, and I think it's going to change healthcare dramatically over the next 10 to 20 years, is that if you look at the foundation for almost all significant diseases in the United States, and the world for that matter, the modern world, such as hyperlipidemia, elevated cholesterol, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia. The foundation of all of these is built on visceral fat. Now, visceral fat is different. Some people can have 10 or 20 extra pounds, and there's some people that could have far more. It's just there's a different sensitivity that each individual displays. But that is the foundation upon which all diseases those diseases are built. I've been practicing now almost 4 decades. I do a lot of primary care, and you see people year after year coming back and they say, "Not to worry, doc, I'll take those 20 pounds off." And now it's 5 or 10 years, and now their A1C is elevating, or now their blood pressure is elevating, or now their lipoprotein A, which is an indicator of heart disease risk, is elevating. And then you start them on metformin, and then you start them on an antihypertensive, or then you start them on a cholesterol medication. That road that people take from their 20s through their 50s and then beyond, we can stop that now. And I think that what we're seeing, at least in my practice, a lot of people stopping it. They're choosing to go on this medication to get rid of that visceral fat and develop better habits. And for the first time in my professional life, we see people coming into the office happy with smiles that what they're doing is working. Nobody wants to go to the doctor's office. We're probably a step ahead of the dentist and the IRS, but they're coming for something, they're coming for something bad, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. They're worried about chest pain, whatever. Now they're coming to the office and they're saying, "Wow, I have never felt better, and I'm eating healthier, I'm exercising, I've taken that weight off, my clothes are looser, I just feel better. I'm quicker on the pickleball court." It's really kind of remarkable how we're being proactive. I've been around long enough. I've seen the birth of statins. I did my fellowship in liver transplant. I've seen the birth of immune suppression drugs, biologicals, This is the most remarkable medication I have ever seen. And I don't want to sound like a cultist, but from my perspective, with thousands, maybe 10,000 plus patients, I don't think I've ever had something in my back pocket I could give to a patient that could bring them to where they want to get to, where I want them to get to, which is good health and illness, disease prevention. It's pretty insane. I love coming to work. I don't really work. I change locations. I've never really worked in my life. I love what I do. I love going to the office and just seeing these people come in and sending people. I mean, I think that we get more patients on this from people that we put on it, and for different reasons. So I don't want to go too far afield, but what we have seen is kind of interesting side effects from this. Just 2 days ago, we had a person who gorges in bulimia for 30 some odd years, stopped after the second injection. I've had people stop smoking. I've had people stop playing with their cuticles after 40 years. I've had people stop pulling their hair out after decades. I'm not sure what to make of it. All I can tell you is that it's really a remarkable compound. And the side effect profile, we've had to stop it on one person that we probably should not have started it on. And that's it. I think they should probably pay me to do an advertisement for them, but it is that remarkable. It really has changed our entire practice. It has changed our patients' lives. It's something that I don't think I ever would have expected to see when I started medical school 45 years ago. It's at the point where I think I say to people, try it. And what we have done, I'm not trying to sell my practice, obviously, we've made it so inexpensive that give it a shot, pun intended. Give it 2 or 3 months. You're 20 pounds overweight, your A1C is ticking up, you're not diabetic yet, but instead of 5.6, it's now 5.8 or 5.9. I know next year, 2 years from now, it's going to be 5. It's going to be 6.0, and then your fasting blood sugar is going to go up. And I can tell you, in somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be a diabetic. And it's tough for the patients because, I'm a patient too. You have life, you have a family, you have kids, you have all these things. You're busy, you got work, you got taxes. It's tough to take good care of yourself in a very busy world. And this gives you an opportunity to do that. There are hopefully some advances coming along the way. There's one offered, there's a pill form that doesn't really work yet, and another one that they had to just stop experimenting with side effects. So I just don't see it not being an injection for the near future. Don't forget, it has to cross the blood-brain barrier, right? So for the medicine to get into your brain, it's easier to inject it into your stomach and bypass, for the most part, the acid and then the liver. And basically, it goes, the availability to the circulation in the brain is much better that way. So I think it's going to be it's going to be a challenge to get this in pill form. The difference between semaglutide and tirzepatide is that tirzepatide blocks another receptor in the brain, in addition to the one that semaglutide does. That said, semaglutide is extraordinarily effective in the overwhelming. I think our ratio is 90 to 5, semaglutide to tirzepatide. And again, I hate practicing in the first person. We have several hundred plus patients on it, so it's not that small a number. But all I can tell you is that I appreciate being invited here. I love talking about these medications. You should explore them with your physician. I think you tailor it to the individual. We have some patients on it that you would probably be shocked that just need to lose 5 or 7 pounds, and that extra visceral fat is really affecting them in a negative way. So I think it's interesting to talk about with your physician in any way, shape, or form, if you think you need it. We have all age groups. We have people in their 80s on it.
Questions? So I don't have a mic, so if you could repeat the questions I've got.
Sure.
One of them is, what's the biggest reluctance somebody would have to try something like this? Because it is a needle, it's a little unconventional, it's a new drug. How are you seeing patients react to this, and what are you telling them to get them to take that step?
The biggest reluctance, yes. The question is, what's the biggest reluctance? There's probably two or three. One is a needle. Most humans don't like needles. The second one's the cost. The third one weighed down is what the potential side effects. So in that order, and I suffered from the first one myself. I didn't give myself the first injection. I had my assistant do it. I've done everyone subsequently. The needle's not that bad. Again, it's so small you have trouble seeing it. And you couldn't kill anybody with it. It's 31 gauge. I don't think you can fit a hair through there. It's less than a 1/4 inch. And where you're doing the injection, and there's not a lot of pain receptors. The cost is probably the biggest. The accessibility. I think if we were to take semaglutide and put it on a corner in a market, like a Girl Scout stand, if we'd let them raise money selling semaglutide instead of cookies, they would probably rake in $100 billion. Because I think that the demand is so far outweighs the availability. And I don't, it's a healthcare system that we have built and we live under. And I kind of understand that the companies that have developed it deserve to get their money back and make a profit on it. It's just very expensive. And to get approved through the insurance company is very, very difficult. And that's why you see this online. There are different companies and different efforts through online companies to provide you with it. They'll charge you for the medication. They'll charge you for a membership fee. The way that we do it in my practice is that we just charge you for the medicine and we don't charge for any medical supervision. So it's $47 an injection without any copay or doctor's fees. So what we're trying to do is what I think if the Girl Scouts did, they wouldn't have to raise money for a while. I think if you gave it to everybody a chance to try it, the majority of people would try it. And the side effects, everybody understands, and I think the other problem that we see a lot is that they know somebody. It's never good to live in the first person. Well, I know somebody who took it and they have a Ozempic face or muscle loss. Every effective diet causes muscle loss. It's just that the semaglutide is very effective. But there shouldn't be muscle loss because what you should do normally anyway is exercise training, light resistance training, eat protein. Or I have a friend, they had started having vomiting or again, they see one person had side effects. That's true for any medication, by the way, not just semaglutide. But this seems to have won the day in terms of people trying it and talking about it. Once you tell people that the side effects are really not that bad, So the biggest side effects that we see are early satiety. Some people have reflux. You can get some diarrhea, constipation. And that's the big one. Those are the big ones. But again, we've never really had to stop a patient from taking it from no side effects. And what you do, I can tell you personally too, is that you understand what's going to happen if you eat. You don't eat too much. You don't eat late. You get ready for that full feeling. I think part of the reason that people decrease their alcohol intake, it sits in your stomach a little longer because it slows stomach emptying. You can. So yeah, the question is the side effects. Can you prescribe? So for heartburn, reflux, omeprazole, Pepcid. I've been treated for reflux since 1980 when I had my first endoscopy. I carry around Pepcid or famotidine, the chewable tablets, everywhere I go. So what we would normally use to treat reflux is what we would treat the reflux that may be secondary to the semaglutide. Constipation, same thing. I happen to like magnesium citrate tablets, or there's some, Colace. There's different ways to treat that. But yeah, we can treat the side, or Zofran if you're nauseous, but I think we may have written one Zofran prescription, and that's it. And they're really not that bad, because what happens is that you get used to it, and you understand what's going to happen when you give yourself the injection over the next week. And you have to be patient, because I tell people, it's not weight loss, it's fat loss. And there's a difference because fat cells don't weigh a lot. And what you notice when I say quickly, within weeks to a month or so, your clothes get looser, your belt gets looser. I think the biggest other problem that we have is that I keep telling people, don't buy new clothes. Wait till we find the right dose for you at the right weight range. So what I do for myself and for my patients is that you find a weight range that you want to maintain yourself within, that's healthy for you, that is sustainable for you, that gives you the best life quality and best blood test at the same time. I hate to add that in there. So for me personally, it used to be between 162 and 167, and I was there for decades. Because as a human being and a physician, people listen with their eyes, not their ears. So I couldn't be there with a patient who's smoking and tell them to stop smoking if I'm smoking. So I have always led a very healthy life. And I've kept myself between 162 and 167 for decades. I touched my birthday's next week. On a Memorial Day weekend 5 years ago, I touched 159. Now, mind you, again, me personally, I have 18,000 miles on my Peloton in the last 5 years. And I do low-carb, intermittent fasting, 1 meal a day on Saturdays. So I do glycogen depletion days. When I put myself on this, I very quickly dropped to the 150s. And now my weight range is going to be somewhere between 152 to 156. So I lowered it by 10 pounds. In that journey over the last 4 months, I've had to change my lifestyle. I stopped intermittent fasting. I couldn't do it. I couldn't have my breakfast being lunch. I had to have something at 9 or 10 o'clock, some yogurt or something. I eat more protein now, and I eat a lot of protein to begin with. I do probably resistance training most days. At night, I do what I call non-sweat exercising. So before I brush my teeth, I have dumbbells. I'll do 10 of these, brush my teeth. I'll come back out and do 10 of these. I'll lift somewhere around 2,000 pounds 3 to 4 times a night without breaking a sweat, in between doing what I'm going to do anyway. I'm more vigilant doing that. So I'm changing my lifestyle to accommodate the semaglutide, and also, much more importantly, I don't think I've ever felt as good as I have felt. I've had to decrease my exercise. I know it sounds insane, but that's true. So every patient takes a journey with this, and what we do in the practice, or what I do, is I have people come back as often as you want. It's up to you, but what I try to do is I try to lead them down this path on the semaglutide, knowing that this is what's going to probably happen, and how do we prepare for that? Or if something is happening, how do we adjust to that? And if you adjust your lifestyle a little bit, the ride that you get with this is really spectacular, game-changing. I think about my high school weight. I don't think I've had more energy, flexibility, everything. And we see it all the time. We have a lot of patients come in on this, and it's really funny because the whole staff, they come in, they're smiling, and they tell us, great stories. And these sidebar stories about, I stopped, my bulimia stopped, I stopped smoking, my wife noticed I stopped playing with my cuticles after 30 years, all these other things. I stopped smoking, I stopped this, I stopped that, I feel less anxious, I feel less depressed, I feel just happier. It's really amazing when you have done what I have done for the last 40 plus years and see, I hate the term death and destruction, but death and destruction that life brings people up until this chapter. Because again, first time, we have a proactive compound that changes people's health, improves their health, prevents disease, makes diseases better. I had put myself on a statin, and I didn't have to, I just did it prophylactically. I had to come off it because my cholesterol went down to 100. And we see that across the board. People's cholesterols are coming down, their blood pressure is coming down. It's indicated for diabetes. Your blood sugar comes down. It's really, again, I think I'm sounding like a cultist. But there are a few doctors who are using this that don't agree with what I'm saying. And that's why the demand is so great. There are medications that come out that create demand. And sometimes I think it's more artificial demand based on marketing and people trying to sell stuff. This is the first demand that we're seeing that's basically patient-driven. I have a friend who, I have a sister who, I have a brother who, I have a who's doing this, and I can't believe how great they look or how great they feel. Or so the demand for this is being created from the ground up. It's not Madison Avenue creating some type of marketing campaign. You should try this. They don't have to advertise this like Skyrizi or these other biologicals that you see on television. They have to try to prevent the compounding pharmacies from taking too big a piece of their business, which I think is interesting.
Can you talk about compounding? The brand names and this compounding version.
So the questions about the difference between compounding and brand name. So basically it is the generic version. So I take rosuvastatin, which is the generic of Crestor, or atorvastatin for Lipitor you can take. So for every medication there is a generic. That generic is not made by the original pharmaceutical house that invented it, and that's what this is. So where we get our supply is the United States. It's a level 3 FDA approved compounding pharmacy in Texas. It's what I'm using personally. It's the same chemical structure as Ozempic, I think within 8%. And as long as I think they stay away from, I think there's always going to be a supply of semaglutide, even though people are reading that they're trying to take it away. There's always going to be enough chemical variation or something close enough that will be as effective. Any other questions?
In your opinion, if there are so many positive side effects, why do you suppose insurance companies aren't covering it more? If it's a preventative medication, why would they cover it?
That's a really good question. The question is, why don't insurance companies cover it more broadly? I think there's several reasons. One is the cost. Because if they opened it up more broadly at the expense that they're being charged by the pharmaceutical house, it could drive them into bankruptcy probably. The second is that I think a lot of them will wait for the FDA to approve it in terms of being efficacious. Way back, decades ago, the FDA only had to approve a medication for safety, and then they let the doctor and the patient make the decision where to employ that medication. Now they have to approve it for efficacy. Does it work for this indication? So it's easy to get an indication for diabetes or heart disease. There's just so many, you're talking about 60, 70, 80, 90 million Americans with each. To get an indication for arthritis or bulimia or alcohol dependence will take longer time. It's going to happen. I think there's a channel on Reddit called Ozempic with tens of thousands of alcoholics that have stopped drinking with it. I have personally seen a number of people stop. And most people that take it, you will see that your alcohol consumption will diminish. There is. You should always feel free to talk to your doctor about this. And they're not going to want to talk to you about this for one reason. The work and effort that is required to get a patient approved is enormous. We spend so much time and effort to get it approved for patients, and then let's say 3 or 6 months later, the patient has lost the weight and they now don't have the indication, they will not be approved. It's really tough for me because again, this is the system that we have built for ourselves. In an ideal world, you'd just be able to go buy it with your doctor's approval because we know it's safe. The current system is that you try to get it paid for. If you want to get the brand name, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you want to get the compounded form, it costs you far less, easier to access. And that way, it's just you and the doctor making the decision, does it work for you? You should never be afraid to talk to your physician about medications. Ever. But you have to understand there's going to be a little bit, potentially, of a pushback. It's a lot of time and effort for them. If you want, you can always just contact me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you, and that's my email address.
Questions?
So, interesting. Dementia, Alzheimer's. People look at that as a type 3 diabetes. You may have heard that here first, but don't be shocked over the next 5 or 10 years, people don't start referring to it as that. The correlation between Alzheimer's, dementia, and visceral fat, diabetes, is pretty close to 100%. And what happens with too much visceral fat or too high a blood sugar, and here's the problem that we have. We use our current technology to measure blood sugar and what the effects are to define diabetes. The truth is we have no idea what happens in the microcirculation if your blood sugar, let's say, or your A1C is 5.8 or 5.9 and not 5.6, and 6.4 is diabetes. So if you live every day of your life for 30 or 40 years with a slightly elevated A1C, the damage that may be done to the microcirculation in your brain could be significant. And I think that if we had a retrospectoscope in 2050 and we marked this lecture, I don't gamble, but I would probably be willing to bet a jelly donut. Yeah, the correlation's pretty significant, and that's what I tell people. What we understand now is nothing compared to what we're going to understand in 50 years, I hope. And we shouldn't limit ourselves to the concept of just semaglutides lowering or treating diabetes or lowering A1. We have to think ahead, and it's interesting because it treats arthritis very effectively. Its anti-inflammatory properties are pretty significant. How does that work? It makes people stop being bulimic. How does that work? It stops people from drinking. How does that work? But we know it happens. We just don't know how. So back to Alzheimer's. I'm a very simple guy, you know. My father tells me, he says, Berman, keep it simple. There are sharper tacks in the drawer than you. So I just look at visceral fat. And that's why I did it, because my BMI was perfect. I have no plaque, no calcium. My parents are both still alive. But I look at my visceral fat. I said, what's going on here? Can I be better? Can I try something? And that's why I put myself on it. And I try to focus that. I try to make that the focal point with patients. Don't look at your weight necessarily. Don't look at your A1C. Look at your body habitus. Because we don't know what that causes. We know what we know, but we don't know a lot. And I think we really don't know very much at all. We will be looked upon as barbarians the same way that we look as doctors 100 years ago as barbarians 100 years from now. But there's now a compound, medication, that seems to be, again, here's the cultist in me, revolutionary. It seems to attack the foundation upon which every major disease is built. And it seems, and if I was God of America for a day, I would make this available to everybody. As long as you talk about it with your doctor and you're supervised doing it. Life-changing.
You've got an extended comment. I can hear you sit up.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you can. This could be a paid,
Yeah,
paid
do I get paid
presentation.
too?
Yeah, I'm not, but you might as.
No, I'm saying, as a mental health professional, in my personal life and in my professional life, I've seen so many people with anxiety and depression that it's had a huge effect on. And a private patient of mine who I used to see weekly, I would see her twice a month now, and which is not good for me, but because she's feeling so good, and like she said, to the food more, she's like, yeah, and actually her husband's gained weight because she doesn't eat all of her food when they go out to dinner anymore, and now he's gained weight.
So
I
maybe
know
you should send it,
personally impression.
you should send it to me.
Exactly.
But it's true, it's when you just sit back and listen to these people. I have a psychiatrist sending me patients now. It just stops the noise, and I don't know where the noise is, what receptors it's blocking or what it's doing, but it's doing something very remarkable. Again, the side effects, we talked about what are the bad side effects.
The people I know who've been on it is mostly like some nausea, some constipation, but it kind of goes away. Yeah, they get used to it, or they just take stuff, but nothing that made them want to stop.
Right, the benefits far outweigh the side effects, and you start developing plans, or you roadmap ways around or through those complications or side effects. There's nothing really significant. The benefit far outweighs the complications. I even hate the word complications, just the bumps in the road.
You had said once before that maybe some of the long-term effects are not fully known, but the long-term effects of leaving these things untreated are well known.
You should stand up on the mic too. No, but I think John's making a really very important point. And I say that to my patients about almost any disease process and medications. What are the side effects of this medication, or what you want to do to me? And the answer normally is, what are the side effects of not doing it? Right? Because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Carrying the extra visceral fat is going to do this. Right. So I think that it's important for people to understand there are side effects for not. There's always doing nothing is also a choice. Doing something is also a choice. You're doing something. Even by doing nothing, you're doing something. And the nice thing is that there's no need to sit back and not do nothing. And there's a choice available that we know works. The worst thing is not to try it. There's no side effect that is, unless you have unless you have anaphylaxis. There's no reason that you don't talk to your doctor about giving it a try, if it's available to you.
Other questions?
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, by the way. I appreciate your time.